Hi, it's Jan from Iconic Garage. In today's tutorial, we'll create a newspaper vending machine from A to Z. My inspiration was an older 3D project. Let's start with a new document and name the base layer Background. For better contrast control, I use a pastel color. In a new layer called Photos, I place several reference photos. In a new layer, I draw a rectangle. In the 3D and Materials panel, I use Extrude and Bevel. I eyeball the depth value and then play with the axes and perspective. Don't be afraid to experiment with the individual settings. For the 3D template, we only need a rough base shape for the box and the lower stand. The rod will be added separately later. For the linear drawing, I use my favorite basic calligraphic pressure brush. I create a new brush and keep the default settings, only changing the size and pressure behavior. The variation value should match the brush size, so 9 point. The drawing then feels livelier and less technical. That's the style I like. I start tracing the basic shape of the newspaper box. I speed the footage up to 900% here, otherwise we'd still be here tomorrow. I draw the basic shapes of the box and add various details. I sometimes use scratches or even holes in the structure or shape. The form looks worn and more fun. That's why I use a calligraphic pressure brush. The two styles complement each other. At this stage, I no longer need the base 3D model. I'm only drawing the main curves that simulate the outline shapes. Larger details aren't necessary at this point. I'll add those gradually in the following steps. If I need some detail to sit visually on top, I use a different stroke color for easier orientation. If I want to overdraw parts of the drawing with another line, I put white fills beneath them to create a fake mask. After expanding strokes via Expand Appearance, those white fills merge with the white material inside the strokes. I do the same for the bottom part of the newspaper box. The connecting rod between the two sections I'll just sketch manually. Pro tip: don't forget to flip the final drawing sometimes to spot any disproportions or mistakes. It works. Copy the final drawing layer to a new layer and move it all the way to the bottom. We won't need it in this tutorial, and in future videos, I'll show you how this layer can be reused for drawing glass in car illustrations. I select the entire drawing and use Expand Appearance to expand strokes. Under the expanded drawing, I place a white rectangle and use Merge twice so that all white fills in the individual parts become connected. Then I use Divide and ungroup the result. With the Magic Wand tool, I select the white areas and paste them into a new layer called Colors that sits one layer below. I recolor the white to a contrasting color that will reflect shadows and light. I use a saturated pink. I duplicate all the pink shapes to a new shadow layer, recolor them to black, and set Multiply to 40%. That darkens the entire image. Here begins the fun phase, erasing the shadows and building volume. For orientation, I sketch where the sun is coming from. I usually keep the front side without shadow so the drawing doesn't look like it's in the dark. When editing the video, I left this part a bit longer, so I had to record one extra unnecessary voiceover to fill the gap. I forgot to include the coin return section here, so I changed the pink to solid black in color layer and lock it. After that tweak, I go back to erasing and adding shadows. Sometimes it's easier to erase an entire area and draw the shadow manually with the pencil tool. Yes, there are many ways to do this, and as I always say, there are no wrong methods, just different ones. This is the easiest way how to do it. I did the same shadow cleanup on the base and the connecting rod. I create a new reflection layer and put it above shadows. Using the pencil tool, I simply draw white shapes where sharp highlights should hit the surface. I forgot to add the shadow under the part that prevents the door from opening if you don't insert the correct amount of coins. So let's fix it. After I draw a few more reflections in solid white color, I use a gradient from white 0 to 100% for the right look. I keep opacity around 60%. The gradient direction goes top-down. If it's too strong somewhere, don't hesitate to change the direction or reduce opacity. I create a new layer called Reflection Line above Reflections. Here, I use a thinner brush to accent the brightest highlights. Pro tip: don't be afraid to experiment with light and shadow. The more you try, the more intuitive it becomes. After finishing the reflection line drawing, don't forget to lower the opacity. 50% is fine. Back to the colors layer, I recolor the pink to the base colors. Pro tip: I don't use 100% white or 100% black. Highlights get lost in pure white, so I pick a slightly grayish white, and instead of pure black, I use a very dark gray. So shadows still pop in industrial printing on various materials as fabric or paper. Coloring this box is fairly simple since it only contains 2 base colors. If needed, adjust the transparency of the reflections. I create a new layer called Decals. In this video, I placed it wrong and later changed it. The decal layer should actually sit between color layer and shadow layer. All stickers, logos, and details that don't need to be merged directly into color layer go here. You can toggle layers off for a clearer overview. I think that's why the Adobe engineers built this functionality. What a brilliant idea, right? In this section, I'll create the internal labels and markings as on the original. Don't be afraid to experiment and make it your own way. You're the designer and the creator of your content. The font for the coin slot info label is Impact font. I played a bit with the text. I like little Easter eggs in my work, but I focused more on tutorial clarity than silly jokes. The sticker details don't have to be 100% accurate. This isn't technical drawing, and a bit of disproportion can actually look better and give the illustration its own style. Here, I paraphrase the USA Today logo using elements from my own iconic garage logo type while keeping the original color scheme and style. The font used in this logo type is Futura. I made the logo fairly quickly, without unnecessary details, and with a few violations of graphic design best practices, like proper letter spacing, small size legibility, and more. All in all, it did what I needed so I could apply it to parts of the newspaper box. And yes, some elements could be done differently and more precisely, but for this purpose, it's fine. Whole internet is full of clever tutorials how to do or don't do it. Sometimes are more complicated than should be, but we all have our specific style and work process. The coin slot label is done. As mentioned, the decals layer needs to be placed above color layer. With Shear tool and free Distort, I adjust the placement, and I also edit the hole for coins. Yes, it is just a black rectangle. I added gray for the button color. Alternatively, instead of drawing it, you could punch a hole in the sticker with the eraser. Many ways to do it. Pro tip: if it can be done simply, don't do it the complicated way. I place the logo on the side of the newspaper box. The only tool you need is free Distort. Then carefully eyeball the placement. Remember, practice makes perfect. I added text to the lower part of the main box. The font is the same as the logo, so Futura. Use any text you like. Be creative. I guess I wasn't very creative here, so move on. I added an info label to the opening mechanism. Futura font has a dash that's too long, and I couldn't find an alternative via glyphs, so I made the dashes manually with rectangles. Maybe a bit overkill, but it worked. Yes, the font spacing isn't perfect, but let's continue. I used the same approach for the coin return label. The details of the arrow don't matter much, so I did it pretty loosely with the pen tool. The design is too small for it to matter. I make a rectangular shape to match the window in the newspaper box. Design it flat as a clean rectangle and skew it at the end to the needed shape. I used a photo reference and recreated my version based on a real newspaper design, including a few of my older car and merch designs. I used an old drawing of a Datsun wagon and a mascot for the Wankel engine, and a few elements from my merch designs. If you need dummy text, use lorem ipsum right in Illustrator. Just enable Fill New Type Objects with Placeholder Text under Type section in Preference Settings. That saves you from inventing pointless text. Lorem ipsum is commonly used as a placeholder in packaging design mockups. I set the black text to a dark gray. It looks more natural than pure black. With Free Distort, I adjust the tilt. The excess newspaper area outside the window can be erased with the eraser tool, as I did, or masked. There's always more than one option. I created a new layer called Dents. It is all about scratches, dents, and damages that simulate aging of the surface. There are no rules here. I use black lines completely random wherever I like. Don't be afraid to experiment. Design has a few rules, but this isn't one of those cases. I created a new layer. This one is about white lines for emphasizing spots with reflections or the brightest highlights. In car designs, I often use it for headlight reflections in wheel rims. Now the fun liquid layer. I simulate spills on the newspaper box. I use the simple pencil tool and set solid colors to multiply with 40 to 60% opacity. Use any color you want. You might be surprised by the final result. If you want the liquid to stand out more, pick a lower opacity. I'm using the same principle for car illustrations in a rust layer. It works exactly the same. The new layer is about stickers and graffiti, and it works the same as decals, but for clarity I keep it separate and allow it to cover original box decals. Tags and new stickers go over the original machine design, just like in real life. I used some of my older sticker designs to save tutorial time. To simulate a graffiti marker, I created a new brush. Same steps as the earlier calligraphic pressure brush, but here I also want the marker's flatness. So I choose a new calligraphic brush and focus on angle and roundness, like writing with a chisel tip marker. If unsure, check other Illustrator brush tutorials. This is simple. Keep changing size and angle so the writing looks varied. Don't forget to expand appearance each tag and place it on the surface with the correct angle. Feel free to mix different brush sizes and styles. It looks great too. The stand looks new, so it needs a bit of scratches. Small damage is easy with a thin pressure brush. Do it on a new layer and lower the opacity so it feels natural. You can also add larger patches or stains with the pencil or pen tool. I'm choosing the easier option here. Add scratches to the main part of the box as well. Since it has the same color as the stand and the rod, we can use exactly the same style of damage. We're simulating scratches from various everyday objects. If we're not making a real sticker for printing purposes, where an external shadow would look odd, create a new layer above background called ground shadow. With the pencil tool, draw the ground shadow. You can draw over it multiple times with different opacities. I used 20% and 40% and set blending to multiply. And yes, you can use blur effect here if you want. I'm fine with sharp edges. In the liquid layer, we can add drips that ran onto the stand and the ground. Keep the same transparency as before. The last touch is the glass panel in front of the newspapers box. Create a new layer glass and place it under outline. Even though it's a simple rectangle, I need the edges to be covered by the black line work. With the pen tool, I draw the shape and apply the glass effect. It's simple, just a gradient from 0 to 100%, ideally around white tones. Use the eraser tool to create gaps where light hits and where it doesn't. Again, don't be afraid to experiment. To end on a lighter note, I add a simple banana peel. Same process as in previous parts. This detail is small, so no need for extra layers. I did all in one layer. I start with a simple line drawing of the banana peel in a contrasting red line color. Once the line work is done, I used Expand Appearance to convert strokes. As before, I add a base fill and use Merge and Divide in Pathfinder. I recolor the base gray with a green-yellow gradient. I add shadow in the unlit areas with the pencil tool. At the same strength I used on the box. Finally, with a calligraphic brush, I add a few specks on the peel. I group it and move the entire object anywhere I want. First one was the best, I think. Before using the artwork for industrial printing as posters, stickers, and more, don't forget to unlock all layers and objects. The final step is converting any remaining strokes. Use the Magic Wand tool on one stroke, it selects all others, and then Expand Appearance. Select everything and group to one layer. Congrats! You've got a vector graphic you can scale and recolor freely. For print, I save it as a PDF file at the highest quality print option. Thanks for watching. Look at my other creations on my Instagram profile. Be creative, be you. See you next time.